Coming up on Network Africa, Tigray People's Liberation Front accuses Ethiopian army of launching a second day of ground attacks as part of fresh military offensive against Tigray rebels. The United Nations is calling for investigations on disproportionate use of force against migrants in Libya. Plus, former leader of the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, Henry Okah, loses another bid to get out of jail. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in Ethiopia, where a senior member of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, says the Ethiopian army and allied forces have launched the second day of ground attacks as part of a fresh military offensive against Tigray rebels. Getachew Reda said thousands of people have perished in the renewed fighting and the rebel forces are holding their ground and more. The rebels control the Tigray region and had advanced to neighboring Amhara region, where the fighting is reportedly taking place. An earlier statement by the rebel forces alleged that the government had launched an offensive on them on all fronts, aided by airstrikes and drone attacks, while the federal government has been largely silent. But a statement by its National Defense Forces on Monday accused the rebel forces of spreading lies and attempting to simultaneously play victors and victims. The suspected commander of the Central African Republic Seleka rebels has appeared at the International Criminal Court for a hearing on whether to confirm charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity against him. Mahamat said Abdelkani is accused of using state machinery to hunt down, detain, kill, and torture supporters of the deposed President Francois Bozize. The mainly Muslim Seleka rebels toppled President Bozize in a coup in 2013 and took charge of the Christian-majority country, plunging it into turmoil. Mohammed says Abdelkani, who is alleged to have been commander of one of the units responsible, was arrested and transferred to The Hague earlier this year. Well, Tuesday's hearing at the ICC is designed to help the judges decide if there is enough evidence to go to trial.
This is as straightforward a case as is likely to come before this court. This is not a case where Your Honours are going to be challenged to look at complicated theories of liability of a military commander or a civilian superior removed from the theatre of conflict. It is a detention case. And we say the evidence overwhelmingly shows that Mr. Said was in the room where it happened. He encouraged it, he facilitated it, but he also took part in beatings and mistreatment that justifies the forms of participation that are put in the document containing charges. The hole below is the location where many of those unfortunate souls were placed in terrible conditions without toilet, food, or any type of care. Literally standing above them was Mr. Said. We say that room and that area was his office. The evidence discloses that. He used to frequent it. And perhaps it's quite apt that literally standing on their heads, trampling on their dignity, stamping on their rights, he cannot plead ignorance. The smell was awful. The proximity could not have been closer. This is the type of criminality that gave rise to the charges before Your Honours.
The UN Human Rights Office is calling for prompt and thorough, impartial and independent investigations into the use of disproportionate force by Libyan authorities against migrants and asylum seekers. UN rights spokesperson Marta Hurtado says armed forces in Tripoli began a series of mass arrests a week earlier, detaining more than 4,000 people in overcrowded detention centers. Well, on Sunday, hundreds of migrants and refugees were waiting outside the United Nations Center in Tripoli to seek help in leaving Libya after what aid groups called a violent crackdown on them. The migrants say they have faced violent abuse and extortion in a country that has seen little peace for a decade, but has become a major transit point for people seeking to reach Europe.
We call on the authorities to establish prompt, thorough, impartial, and independent investigations into the claims of unnecessary and disproportionate use of force, including the allegations of killings by the security forces and affiliated groups, with a view to hold those responsible accountable. Victims have the right to justice and reparations. We also call on the Libyan authorities to release all arbitrarily detained migrants and asylum seekers, cease their raids on their settlements and halt evicting them, as well as stop criminalizing them. We encourage the authorities to reform the legislation to decriminalize irregular entry, stay, and exit of people.
Kenya is set to disregard the judgment of the International Court of Justice on the maritime border dispute between Kenya and Somalia. The two countries are both claiming a 62,000 square miles in the Indian Ocean thought to be rich in oil and gas. Kenya's border currently runs horizontally into the Indian Ocean, and that is how Nairobi wants it to stay. But Somalia insists its southern boundary should run southeast as an extension of the land border. The former leader of the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, Henry Okah, has lost yet another bid to get out of jail. He had brought 3 applications before Judge Mabitsela of the Johannesburg High Court in September, one for bail, one for leave to appeal his conviction, and another for reservation on the question of law. He opted to start with the bail application, saying he needed to be free in order to pursue his legal challenge of his conviction. Okah was sentenced to an effective 24 years in jail in 2013 for allegedly masterminding 2 bombing incidents in Warri and Abuja in 2010, where several people died and others injured. South Africa, where he is resident, convicted him on 13 counts of terror-related offences under the country's Anti-Terrorism Act. Our Johannesburg Bureau Chief, Betty Debier, reports from the Johannesburg High Court.
Called that this is a bail application pending an application for leave to appeal his trial and conviction here in South Africa in 2012. In his judgment, Judge Mabitsela dismissed the application, saying that the applicant failed to show exceptional circumstances that would justify bail. He said issues like the standing conviction and sentence, the likely residence while on bail, and the safety and security of Mr. Okah while on bail, as he himself had raised, were hanging in the balance. Judge Mabitsela also pointed out that the issue of keloids, a skin condition Mr. Okah is suffering from, is not life-threatening, as his own doctor had told the court. To Mr. Okah, who thanked the judge for giving him a fair hearing, the fight continues as he told his wife Azuka, who was present in court, that he would be headed to the Supreme Court of Appeal next. But his lawyer told Channels Television that before they get to that, they still need to approach a Johannesburg High Court for leave to appeal first. He also admitted that Okah may have put the cart before the horse by applying for bail first, before leave to appeal his conviction. It is noteworthy that Henry Okah, according to the law, could be eligible for parole in a little over 3 years' time, but he says he will continue fighting against his conviction because he wants to clear his name. From the South Gauteng High Court, Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
The Democratic Republic of Congo will be playing host to the 5th African Business Forum, organized to foster development of a battery, electric vehicle and renewable energy industry value chain and market in Africa. Although the November summit is expected to provide significant opportunities for Africa, especially as there is a global transition towards green energy and rapid decarbonization. This trend has spurred the demand for electric vehicles and investment in battery-powered storage systems, which is expanding the deployment of solar and wind energy. Well, at the fourth edition that was organized by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa back in February, the agenda featured a discussion around innovative financing to leverage energy and economic diversification for Africa's development. Antonio Pedro is the Deputy Executive Secretary in charge of program support at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. He joins us now live from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Thank you for speaking to us on the program.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to African News.
Well, the Economic Commission... You're welcome. The Economic Commission for Africa, has led the organization in several crucial Africa business forums during the AU summits of the past years. Now, why this twist on renewable energy? What is at stake?
Well, as you've indicated in your introduction, we've started a transition towards cleaner, greener energies in which battery minerals play an important role. And in DRC, we have the largest producer of cobalt, which is an essential battery mineral. And DRC produces up to 70% of the global cobalt. And it retains roughly 3% of an increasingly important value chain, which is going to reach about $8.8 trillion by 2025 on the strength of the transitions that we are becoming part of our present and will be becoming even important in the future. So we are moving from basically 10 million vehicles to 160 million vehicles by 2050. And with that, the consumption of batteries to fuel these electric vehicles will increase. So the DRC Africa Business Forum, which we are organizing together with the government of DRC under the hostage of President Tshisekedi, is an opportunity for DRC and the rest of Africa to move up in the ladder by promoting value addition in the production of battery precursors, battery cells, and in future, of course, electric vehicles. So this is at stake. It's an opportunity for Africa to play a greater role in the transition towards cleaner transport systems, cleaner energy systems, on the strength of its endowments, of which, of course, DRC is an example. But many other African countries have battery minerals. Here, for example, I'm talking of Gabon and South Africa that produces manganese, another battery mineral. I'm talking of DRC and Zambia that produce copper, another battery mineral. Tanzania and Mozambique that produce graphite, and so on and so forth. So it's an opportunity for the entire continent to foster the emergence of regional value chains.
So what is the strategy, to moving DRC and these other countries up in the battery and electric vehicle value chain, and how, does it speak to the rest of Africa?
First, this is a conversation that will be informed by evidence. We've commissioned a study by Bloomberg Neff. This is a reputable consulting firm, the data with very strong metrics and data. And the Bloomberg study will be public soon. That will, among other things, indicate that DRC can be a globally competitive investment destination for the production of battery precursors. So that is the starting point. The conversation is going to be based on very strong fundamentals. So the strategy includes, of course, based on the strength of those numbers, to engage with investors from within and without Africa. And we're very happy that there has been considerable interest on the opportunities that DRC and Africa offer. And so the government of DRC is organizing itself with a view to, among other things, provide in special economic zones, industrial parks, the best that it can offer in terms of the infrastructure to support the emergence of such industrial plants.
All right, then, Antonio Pedro, Deputy Executive Secretary at the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Thank you for speaking to us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Still ahead on the program. Hand over your phone for a discount in Egypt's national e-waste initiative that aims to minimize the harmful effect of unsafe management. Please stay with us for more details. Welcome back to the program. It's the fourth year that drought has devastated homes in southern Madagascar. Now, more than 1 million people, or 2 out of 5 residents of Grand Sud region, require emergency food aid in what the United Nations is calling a climate change famine.
Some days, all Ali eats is sugary water. He's happy if there's a handful of rice. But with 6 young kids and a wife to support, he often goes without.
In the morning, we take water and sugar for lunch. It is crushed into dry corn, as you see. And in the evening, we sometimes don't have anything. Unless there's a little income on the day, then we can buy rice. Before, we could buy things because we had a small amount of money. The monthly ration of the World Food Programme food aid is also not guaranteed.
Climate change is battering the Indian Ocean island, and several UN agencies have warned in the past few months of a climate change famine here. Researchers at the University of California at Santa Barbara say rainfall patterns in Madagascar are growing more erratic. They've been below average for nearly 6 years. The country produces less than 0.01% of global carbon dioxide emissions, according to the World Carbon Project. 500,000 children are expected to be acutely malnourished in southern Madagascar, 110,000 severely so, according to the UN Children's Fund, causing developmental delays, disease, and death.
For example, in the Ambassador district we visited yesterday, that is a project of 200 hectares of land that will be allocated to 2,000 families. It is huge because these 2,000 families are here, and we must know that during the period of severe drought, there is normally the rural exodus. This part of Madagascar is a victim of climate change, except they have not participated in it. And what we expect today from the superpowers is that the countries that pollute the most must help the countries that pollute the least.
Nutriset, a French company that produces emergency food, Plumpy Nut, opened a plant in southern Madagascar last week. It aims to annually produce 600 tons of therapeutic fortified food made of peanuts, sugar, and milk for malnourished children. The Malagasy government is also giving parcels of land to some families fleeing the worst hit areas. 200 families receive land with chickens and goats, which are more drought resilient than cows. They were also encouraged to plant cassava, which is more drought resilient than maize.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan and the South Sudan Democratic Monitoring and Engagement Observation Program are jointly hosting a workshop in the capital city, Juba, to discuss the people's participation in the national budget process that would enhance public ownership of national resources, thereby boosting delivery of much-needed services for all communities. Well, it's 10 years after gaining independence, and South Sudan is on the brink of ushering in a truly democratic era for its citizens as it emerges from the devastation of past civil wars and begins preparing for elections as stipulated in the revitalized peace agreement.
Should not be like before. State funds belong to citizens themselves. But without the means to view how they are spent, the public can never fully consider themselves the masters of their government. Popular participation in the national budget process is an essential aspect of economic reform and a prerequisite in facilitating the transparency and accountability. It ensures ownership of public resources by the people and facilitates prudent management and efficient service delivery. Consequently, it is both right and necessary that the recent progress on the peace agreement implementation be accompanied by a broadening and deepening of fiscal transparency.
Local media in Tunisia is reporting that in the last few months, 15 Tunisian pilots have left the country's national carrier for Air Senegal. Head of the Tunisian Federation of Airline Pilots, Karim Eloumi, said the pilots are attracted by better pay packages offered by the Senegalese carrier, which was launched in 2018. He adds that at the national level, there's a real risk of loss of experience because of the officials that are leaving are high-profile pilots. Well, unlike the Senegalese airline, which is expanding, Tunisia Air has been hamstrung by debts estimated to be $657 million. Thousands of tons of electronic waste are being recycled in Egypt through a government initiative that aims to minimize the harmful impact of unsafe management. The new initiative offers incentives to citizens to hand over their old electronic devices for recycling.
eTadweer, launched in June this year after Egypt passed a new law for waste management in 2020. It connects citizens with e-waste collection points at branches of Raya and Vodafone, two private sector telecommunication companies, who in turn move the discarded devices to recycling centers. This allows users to log their old devices into a special application and get discount vouchers for a variety of products as an incentive.
For people to give me their e-waste, I have to give them an incentive. In the current situation, until the e-waste law is implemented, the value of this incentive must be greater than what the unofficial sector offers for e-waste. So we started getting in touch with companies that can offer discount vouchers.
Nearly 90,000 tons of e-waste are produced annually within the country of 100 million people. They are usually handled by garbage collectors in the informal sector who keep the recyclable parts of electronics and haphazardly discard the rest. This poses a serious environmental and public health threat due to contamination caused by hazardous minerals.
The hazard is in the battery, so we collect them in boxes and bury them in Al Nasiriyah in Alexandria at the end of each month. It's a safe and healthy location because we currently cannot recycle lithium batteries, unfortunately.
10 factories are currently licensed to recycle e-waste, and more factories are expected to receive new licenses, the Environment Ministry said.
So eTadweer was a part of a bigger approach that we had, a market-oriented approach, where we focused on formalizing the recycling part, as I mentioned, moving from 2 formal recyclers to 6 recyclers, so very specialized with high-tech processes. And on the other side, we were playing a role in formalizing the collection. So from the user of mobile phone tablets, in households, to the points where, at the end of the life of the equipment, we can collect these devices and channel them to the recyclers.
The project is carried out by the Egyptian Ministry of Environment with the collaboration of the United Nations Development Programme and a number of private sector companies.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.